Ukraine's president visits the US, and Americans are freed in a deal with Iran. All of that and more today, September 19th, 2023. Good morning, Early Birds. I'm Jonathan Lehrfeld, and this is the Early Bird Brief, produced by Defense News and Military Times. First up, US President Joe Biden and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy are expected at the UN General Assembly as the general debate for the 78th session starts today. This will be Zelenskyy's first in-person appearance at the United Nations since the Russian invasion of his country. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Biden will host Zelenskyy at the White House later this week.
This will be their third meeting here at the White House, and it certainly comes at a critical time, as Russia desperately seeks help from countries like North Korea for its brutal war in Ukraine, as Ukrainian forces continue to make progress in their counteroffensive, and just after the next Ukraine Defense Contact Group meeting that Secretary Austin is organizing with dozens of our allies and partners in Europe earlier next week.
Zelenskyy is also expected on Capitol Hill later this week. His trip comes as Congress is debating Biden's request to provide as much as $24 billion in military and humanitarian aid for Ukraine as it fights the Russian invasion. But conservative Republican lawmakers have been pushing for broad federal spending cuts. Some of those allied with former President Donald Trump are specifically looking to stop money to Ukraine. Meanwhile, officials said 6 Ukrainian deputy defense ministers were fired yesterday. It comes 2 weeks after Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov was dismissed in a corruption scandal. A permanent representative of the Cabinet of Ministers shared the news on Telegram. The post did not include an explanation of the firings, but the government has been investigating accusations of corruption in the military related to purchasing equipment. The former defense minister was removed earlier this month after a scandal involving the defense ministry's procurement of military jackets at 3 times their cost. He denied the allegations, but resigned. Another important story: 5 Americans who had been detained for years in Iran walked off a plane in Qatar and into freedom yesterday. All 5 were freed in exchange for 5 Iranians in U.S. custody as part of a deal that included Biden agreeing to unlock nearly $6 billion in frozen Iranian assets. Despite the deal, tensions are almost certain to remain high between the U.S. and Iran, which are locked in various disputes, including over Tehran's nuclear program. Iran says the program is peaceful, but it now enriches uranium closer than ever to weapons-grade levels. Speaking to reporters, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the deal is separate from other issues with Iran.
It doesn't speak to anything else in the relationship. We continue to be determined to take whatever step is necessary to deal with actions by Iran in a whole host of areas that are profoundly objectionable.
Right now, there's also a major American military buildup in the Persian Gulf. The U.S. sent a ship and fighter jets to the region after Iranian attempts to seize commercial ships there. The U.S. Navy says Iran has seized at least 5 commercial vessels in the last 2 years and has harassed more than a dozen others. Meanwhile, Iranian state media reported a military drone crashed during a test flight in northern Iran yesterday. The incident wounded 2 people and damaged buildings. In other news, directed energy weapons are making the jump from sci-fi to the real world. For more on this, C4ISR Net reporter Colin Demarest joins the episode today. Hey Colin, so I understand success in fielding practical weapons inspired by the popular and immensely powerful devices that can be found in computer games, movies, and sci-fi novels has long eluded governments, scientists, and defense contractors. What, though, has recently changed?
Hey, so I think the tech has matured. While it's not there completely, it's made good progress since the days of old. Directed energy weapons come mainly in 2 forms. We're talking high energy laser, HEL, and high power microwave, HPM. The Army, Air Force, and Navy are all right now testing and folding laser and microwave weapons into their arsenals. The Air Force, for example, tested its Thor in April, and the Navy has Lockheed-made lasers aboard its destroyers. Overall, the Pentagon is spending about $1 billion annually in the development of these things.
Why are the weapons now in development that we're talking about significant for the future of warfare? What big players are looking to dig into it?
Officials see directed energy as a means to counter a good bit of threats: drones, rockets, artillery, mortars, and likely more. And there's obviously been an explosion in drone application recently. Just look at the Russia-Ukraine war and the unmanned investments U.S. industry is making. In terms of directed energy specifically, a lot of the big defense companies are involved, including Lockheed and RTX, formerly known as Raytheon. Booz Allen Hamilton, as another example, launched a laser division known as HEL-Works last year. That's HEL, a reference to the laser weapons.
And then, of course, I have to ask you, which Halo do you think is the best Halo?
So I'm guessing you're asking me that because I wrote a bunch about the Spartan laser and kind of waxed poetic in my intro to my story. But the easy answer is the first, the OG, Halo Combat Evolved. That's the best. And I know you didn't ask, but after that, it's probably Halo 3, then Halo 2, then Reach, then ODST. And in my mind, 4 and 5 don't exist, so we shouldn't really even talk about it.
Thanks, Colin. Please like and rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Also on the radar for today, in case you missed it, NASA's chief administrator recently said the agency is offering to join forces with the Pentagon on UFO research. The offer is an effort to move away from sensationalism to science. The space agency released a report recommending that its scientists work with the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. That team spearheads the Pentagon's investigations of UFOs. Coordination between the two agencies could lead to better research and data collection on unknown objects in the Earth's atmosphere. The report comes as the Biden administration continues to craft and update its policies regarding UFOs. Earlier this month, Defense Scoop first reported that Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks would directly oversee the Pentagon's UFO office and receive weekly updates from its lead. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson believes the odds of finding extraterrestrial life in the universe are high, and that it's just a matter of time.
If you ask me, do I believe there's life in a universe that is so vast that it's hard for me to comprehend how big it is? My personal answer is yes.
NASA officials will decide in the coming weeks and months how best to implement suggestions from the report.
The NASA independent study team did not find any evidence that UAP have an extraterrestrial origin, but we don't know what these UAP are.
And now, here are some other stories that we're hearing chirps about. Authorities searched near 2 South Carolina lakes yesterday for a Marine Corps F-35 fighter jet that apparently crashed after the pilot safely ejected over the weekend. China's military sent 103 warplanes toward Taiwan in a 24-hour period. Taiwan's defense ministry said planes were detected between 6 a.m. on Sunday and 6 a.m. yesterday. Secretary of the Navy Carlos del Toro announced a future John Lewis-class oiler will be named after American abolitionist and social activist Harriet Tubman. And in case you missed it, Jason Salier fended off a feisty challenge to claim his second consecutive overall crown at the annual Air Force Marathon. And on this day in history, in 1959, Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev, on a visit to the United States, learned he would not be allowed to visit Disneyland. Government officials said they were concerned crowds at the park would pose a safety hazard. That's it for us this morning. To get more of the top stories and breaking news, go to defensenews.com/EBB to subscribe to the Early Bird Brief newsletter. Please give us a like, rating, and a comment wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media @defense_news and @Military Times. The Early Bird Brief is hosted by me, Jonathan Lehrfeld, and produced by Zimone Z. Perez. Today's episode features stories by The Associated Press, Colin Demarest, and Zimone Perez. Our podcast editor is Jessica Edwards, and our editor-in-chief is Mike Gruss. Have a great day.